Hey guys, coming for Legends Tomorrow, Season 2, Episode 11, Turncoat, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode, mainly because of how great the show has been recently. I mean, they really have been on a high. I think since the season started, really, they really have been coasting through, and I'm not saying I expect perfection, because it's not a perfect show. I mean, as good as the last two episodes have been, not a perfect show. I mean, there's still a lot of things, but it's becoming a lot more self-aware. It's realizing it doesn't need to be this serious thing. It can just have fun with itself, and I like the way they've done that in the past two episodes. And this episode, well, I don't think was on par with the last two because of just the lack of character and depth, and this was definitely more of, a regular Legends Tomorrow episode. It still was a really great episode. I definitely did enjoy it overall. There was a lot of fun stuff going on here. It had the great character interactions that we had. No Thawne or Dark, which was kind of weird he wasn't there, but let's just get into this episode and talk about it overall, because I definitely do want to get into it. So we start off in New Jersey, 1776, on Christmas Day. Yes, this is a Christmas special. I don't know why they pick a Christmas special in February, but it makes as much sense for it to be 50 degrees in February. It makes as much sense as that, just saying. But Rip then rallies the Redcoats and says that George Washington is dead. He says that they don't have to fight fair and has two soldiers bringing a crate filled with 21st century rifles, and he tells the Redcoats to grab the guns and open fire. So Thawne is watching as the soldiers practice with the rifles, and Rip tells him that he's created an aberration, and the legends will come to investigate, and then he'll kill them. So obviously, you can tell this is, what Thawne is kind of programmed him to do. But once Thawne is satisfied that Rip will kill him, he tells Rip to bring him the fragment of the spear to him and speeds off. Because as we know, Thawne needs to obtain that spear in order to try to, correct his history, so that way that he is alive in the present. He wants to make sure that happens. So on Wave Rider, Gideon tries to locate the next fragment of the spear. Meanwhile, we see Ray tells Mick and complains that Mick doesn't clean up after himself, and when he pushes Mick in the chest with a finger to make his point, Mick twists his wrists, and I really do love just little interactions like this are a lot of fun to watch, and that's something the show is just doing a great job with. It doesn't need all of these, crazy, insane, plot twists. It doesn't need to be that. It can just be characters interacting and stuff like that. That is this show. That is the fun of this show, and I'm really enjoying stuff they're doing there. I think it's just a lot of fun to watch, but Nate and Amaya are then making breakfast, and they wish that they could get off Wave Rider occasionally, and their stuff by far is my favorite stuff in this episode. I mean, I know I've said before that Nate, I think, is kind of the thing that's making the season so great, because he is such a fun character, and he's not someone who has an overly complex backstory or anything like that. He's just a really fun character. But this was definitely my favorite part of the episode. I thought it was definitely the most fun. It felt very contemporary, and I like the way that Legends Tomorrow contrasts, the past with contemporary. They do that quite well here, and he gets some pancakes batter off his nose. He asks Amaya to scrape it off. This was a bit cheesy, I will say, but it was still cute. I actually do like these two together, and she does, and they stare at each other for a moment. An earthquake then shakes Wave Rider, knocking them onto each other, and Gideon confirms the day of the origin and tells the legend that George was murdered on Christmas Day, and that essentially jumpstarts the main plot of this episode. So the legends then assemble on the bridge, and Sarah figures that it's a trap. Mick dismisses George as a punk, but Nate points out that if George remains dead, that he won't lead the battles against the Redcoats, and the Americans will fall in the revolution. So this really is a big deal. I mean, if they don't save George Washington, it could be catastrophic consequences for everyone involved. It's crazy to think about how seismic that really is, but Nate knows that George was in William Keith's home in Pennsylvania the night before George crossed the Delaware, and Sarah tells Mick that he'll pose as a private, and Nate and Amaya will pose as wealthy newlyweds, and Martin and Jax will coordinate the ship. So I do like the way she kind of assigned everyone roles, and they are doing a good job with having Sarah as a leader. Like, she really is doing a good job with giving everyone, a good role, not making anyone, wait out, and Ray will head out in his Atom suit and perform reconnaissance, and she's actually going to be the one to sit out. She actually wants to sit out on this one. I like seeing that. I like that Sarah actually did that, and at the Keith house on Christmas Eve, Sarah, Nate, and Amaya arrive. Mick is dressed as a private, Adam is hiding in his head, and Nate tells William that they support the Sons of Liberty. William's surprised to see that Amaya is a black woman, which, it was kind of cool the way he reacted. I like that he wasn't upset about it, like he just said, oh, things are different around there, and Meanwhile, George approaches Sarah, offers her a drink. She soon realizes who he is, and Stein tells her that over the earbud that they should get out. So Redcoats barge in, firing the automatic rifles, and Mick returns fire. George refuses to retreat, and I will say George Washington is definitely the weakest part of this episode. Like, I don't think that the dude who played him was bad, but he just didn't feel like George Washington to me. He felt like any other American soldier, and I get that obviously he wasn't the president yet, but it doesn't feel like, holy shit, this is George Washington. It didn't feel like this guy, this random actor is George Washington. It just seemed like he was a random soldier in the Revolutionary War, and despite that probably being the intent, it didn't really work here. I don't really think that they could have done it that way. I think they could have handled this a lot better. I like the direction they take the storyline, but the casting was just really off here. It really did not feel like George Washington, but Sarah and Mick then both aim guns at him. They order him out, and Nate turns to Steele to protect Amaya, and Adam then takes the Redcoats out, and outside, Rory then triggers a device which fires an energy wave out in all directions, and knocks out the Adam suit and all the power on Wave Rider, and Adam finally managed to get Nate's attention by doing this. So I did like the way it was done. I like the way the Ray was able to alert him. So Mick and Sarah then take George out, and Mick realizes that his flame gun is fried, and Rip then steps out with Redcoat, shoots Sarah in the chest. He tells Mick that he and Sarah are more alike now and has the Redcoats take Mick and George away, leaving Sarah to die in the snow. And that's something that's very different about this episode, is that the Rip that we see here is not the Rip Hunter that we knew from Season 1. Now, I would argue that Rip was a lot more of a dick than, honestly, but you can tell that Arthur Darvill is having such a fun time playing a darker version of this character. I mean, I think he had a great time as Phil. I loved his time as Phil, but we have to accept the fact that that character's over. This version of Rip is already so much more interesting. I mean, he's more evil. He can do things. We're not going to get upset of him because we don't have to root for this character. Now we have a reason for him to do these terrible things. Now we have a reason for him to be so neglectful. He's kind of basically the same character because he still was a dick in Season 1 a lot and very much was, an attention whore. But here, he is a villain. He does have some pretty evil shit up his back and, up his sleeve, and I did like the way this episode showed that. Gave us more of a reason to actually not root for Rip, but actually to enjoy what he's doing and actually, understand why he's doing all these evil things. So Stein and Jackson find Sarah and take her to the Wave Rider med bay, and Jack suggested they merge and use the Firestorm power to bring the ship back online. However, they discover that the quantum stabilizer was fried with all of the other electronics, and Sarah tells Jax that Rip shot her, and Stein says they have to save George and complete their mission. They still have to do that. They can't just leave him to die, and she puts Jax in charge and then passes out from blood loss. So yeah, Jax is now in charge, and he actually did a really good job. This was probably one of my favorite Jax episodes, I have to say. I really did love what Jax had to do here, and he tells Stein he doesn't know how to be captain, obviously because he has no experience with that, and Stein assures him that he does, and I love the way that Stein had this confidence in Jax, which was something that was really well done here. I mean, in Season 1, Stein would have absolutely tried to steal this power from Jax. He would have said, no, there's no way, I trust you, but these two have grown so close that Stein really thinks that Jax is capable of doing anything that he can, and I really did like seeing that, and he finds the others, explains that Sarah put him in charge. He tells Nate and Amaya to rescue George while he and the miniaturized Ray will work on restoring Gideon. So he emphasizes that they have to bring Rip back alive, and as the Redcoats lead away, Mick tells George to take half of them and he'll take the other half, and George points out that if Rip wanted them dead, they would be dead, and he offers to negotiate a prisoner exchange with the commanding officer, but Mick isn't at all impressed, and Amaya then tracks Mick's trail of trash, and Nate points out that they were outside like she wanted, and they talk a little about the Wizard of Oz, and Amaya says she saw it with a boyfriend before Rex, but then Hitler invaded Poland, and the JSA left for Europe, and this is definitely the most interesting aspect of the episode, is that Nate and Amaya, we can tell they think they're moving a bit too fast. They actually want to try to get to know each other, and I like the way we saw it. I like that these two aren't just, going for this relationship. They're actually getting to know each other. They're trying to create, a relationship before they actually have one, and I like seeing that. I thought it was actually really a nice change of pace the way the show did that. Certainly a hell of a lot more interesting than whatever the hell was going on with Kendra, Ray, and Carter last year. A lot more interesting than that. Mainly because these actors just work better together. Nothing feels stilted. Nothing feels fake. It feels real. It feels like, these are two people who actually are getting to know each other and actually do want to be together, but there's a lot of things they don't know. And I did like the way they came back to the fact that Amaya is even though she has been, with them for a while, virtually she's very unknown to the ways of, the world today. She still thinks things are the way they were in the 1960s, and that's understandable because rarely have they traveled to the present. There's only been a couple times they actually traveled to the present, and as we know, those 2 times that they did, one, they had to sit out for most of the mission. We know that from the crossover, and then the second time they were on the ship the whole time. So clearly, she's not very acclimated and very up to date on the way things are in 2017, and I like seeing that. So on Wave Rider, Adam prepares to go through the main duct to the time core and flip the breaker. Stein comes in, says that they need to remove the bullet from Sarah, and Ripton brings a squad of Redcoats to try and break the door open. And one thing that didn't make sense is Stein telling Stein telling Jax that he's not a doctor, he's only a physician, but we saw him in, 2 episodes ago, literally perform open brain surgery on Mick. So there's really no excuse for Stein saying he can't possibly operate on Sarah. It's clear he's capable of doing it, he just isn't willing to do that, and that was one thing that didn't really make sense to me, is why they did that, but I'm willing to give it a pass because of how great everything else was. So Amaya then asks Nate what dating is like in 2017, and he explains that people date for fun, and it's just chill, as he calls it, which, yeah, it is. I mean, there's nothing really too crazy going on. He describes a sexual revolution, and Amaya hears someone, realizes that they're being watched, and they leave the path, approach a waterfall. I really did love these scenes and them talking together, like him asking her about how things were then, because things were really rough, and 2 Haitians charge them, and Amaya subdues one, the other hits Nate. Nate steals up and is knocked out into the waterfall, and Amaya dives after him, taking on steel powers, and this is like, we're talking like freezing water here, like maybe below 0. I mean, it's really bad, and once Amaya gets Nate out of the cold water, they find the nearby Haitian camp, and Amaya tries to warm Nate up to ward off hypothermia, and she says that he needs skin-on-skin contact, takes off her blouse, and removes his shirt, and holds him, and obviously you can tell where this is going to go, but Stein then prepares to operate by candlelight, remove the bullets, and Adam then enters the duct. He approaches the time corp. Rip and his men then get the hatch open, split up to search the time ship, and Jax blinds one redcoat with a makeshift smoke bomb, knocks one out. And meanwhile, the second redcoat finds a present waiting for him. Jax then jumps him. The 2 men fight. Some really good action this episode, definitely will say. They did a really good job with it. And Rip then searches the study for the spear fragment. He hears the struggle, goes to investigate, finds a redcoat unconscious, and Rip deduces that Jax is responsible. And he yells that he taught Jax everything he knows about Wave Rider, and you immediately know this is not, the Rip that we know, because he's not calling Jax, Jefferson. He's calling him Jax, which we know that he called Jax by his last name. So, obviously, this isn't the Rip that we saw in Season 1. So, the Redcoats take George and Mick to their camp. Cornwallis is waiting. He explains that his new colonel helped him, and he has the Redcoats take the prisoners to his tent for a meal before they are executed, and George objects demanding appropriate treatment as a prisoner of war, obviously because, he didn't stand for this, he didn't want this to happen, and Cornwallis says that it's a rebellion. George will be hung for treason, and when George says that Mick was only following orders, Cornwallis tells him that Mick will be returned to his regiment in the morning, and Nathan wakes up, realizes that he's naked. Amaya comes in, says that once their clothes are dry, they'll track George and Mick, and he invites her to stay in the tent with him. Amaya agrees, and they kiss. I guess they have sex after that. Like, we're definitely, we definitely think that they had sex, which was a little fast, but you could definitely tell that's where the episode was going. It definitely seemed like they had that sexual tension here, and I think it was earned. I think it made sense why they went in this direction with them. I mean, I was rooting for them. I like seeing them together, and I thought, they did a good job with it. I can understand people don't, but I thought it was well done overall. But basically, we then see Jax offers to go to the cargo bay with Rip in hot pursuit. He hides, but then runs out, taunting Rip as he goes. Rip tries to bribe him, then offers Jax to use the spear to bring Jax's father back, which is something we know that Jax has always wanted to do. And he catches up to Jax, and Jax refuses the offer. And I loved seeing Jax refuse it. I'm like, don't you dare take that offer. And I really thought he was going to, but he didn't, and it shows how these characters are evolving by doing that. They're not as easily gullible as they once were. They're not just going to listen to everyone. They know that there are certain people they're not going to listen to, and Rip is one of them. He obviously can't listen to this version of Rip, so he pries open a door, goes through as Rip shoots him, and just very intense stuff, and by them actually acting intelligent and not, just being gullible and giving into them, it actually makes the scenes that much more tension-filled, and I really did like the way that was done here. So Mick tells George he's going to bust them out when the Redcoats change shift. He's taking George with him, and George refuses, asks him to take a letter to Martha, and disgusted, Mick says that George is a pansy, and George insists that they must prove to the world that they don't need a title to be gentlemen. So Mick says that Americans are misfits and outcasts, and proud of it, they raid, ambush, fight dirty, and never give up, and Mick asks George what he's going to do. So Nate and Amaya then wake up. Amaya says they have to go after Mick and George, and when Nate suggests they stay a little longer, Amaya reminds them that they do in fact have a job to do. They can't delay. They have to, go on with the task, and Jax manages to turn off the auxiliary power, and Rip finds him as Jax takes cover. He tries to get through to Rip, but Rip dismisses his former self as a self-righteous idiot, and his new allies freed him. He corners Jax, prepares to shoot. Jax says that he knows where the fragment is, and Adam approaches the time core, but a rat then attacks him, forcing him to run. Jax still tries to get through to Rip as he takes him to the study, and he tells Rip that the fragment is aware that Rip left it. Just as Adam yells from the ducts, Jax sets one off of his improvised bombs and cusks into the shadows, but Rip spots a blood trail leading out of the room. And after the surgery, Sarah wakes up. Stein realizes that he succeeded, and I love the joy on Stein's face. He actually was able to pull this off, and Rip comes in. Jax hears Sarah choking and runs to the med bay. Rip aims his gun at Jax, demands the fragment, but Jax refuses to give it up. He ducks out of the way when Rip shoots. Jax says it's inside Rip's telescope. Rip hesitates. Jax begs him to let Sarah go, and he says that her name means nothing to him, and that was a very powerful scene because, as we know, we just got that scene last week, actually 2 episodes ago, where basically, she just told Phil that Rip was her inspiration. Rip turned her into who she was today. And to see him abandon her and treat her like absolute garbage and basically try to kill her, I mean, it really did make us hate him, but you're supposed to. You're not supposed to like him, and that's what makes it that much better, is that you're not supposed to like him. So he says that her name means nothing to him, walks out. Jax goes to the unconscious Sarah sobbing, realizing that he couldn't get through, and Rip then gets the fragment. Stein then wakes up. Jax tells him what happened. He goes to find Rip and kill him, and Stein calls to Rip through the ducts, saying that without power, Sarah will die. Now, Sarah's obviously not going to die. There's just no way they're going to do that. Again, they're not going to pull a Jane the Virgin. So you do kind of a similar problem to what we have with the Flash here, but I thought it worked better here, because again, this is a version of Rip we haven't seen before. We haven't seen Rip, try to kill Sarah like this. Sarah was probably the person he was closest to, and now seeing him turn on her, it's really heartbreaking, honestly. But the rat then chases Ray to the Rector room and out of the duct. He then dives onto the breaker switch, turning the power back on, and Gideon comes online. Martin tells the AI to restore Sarah. So come morning, Cornwallis prepares to hang George. Mick grabs a gun, shoots at the barrel of explosives, then tackles a group of redcoats, and George then headbutts Cornwallis. The two men fight back to back, and one redcoat prepares to shoot Mick, but Steele deflects the shot. He and Amaya take out the remaining redcoats, and George suggests that as American, they run, and Jackson catches up to Rip, guns ready. Rip figures that Jax can't pull the trigger, says there's no point in history, so they might as well burn it all down, and again, he's literally willing to kill Jax, and I like the way that Jax, has this confidence that he's actually ready to take down Rip, and I really did like the way Jax was able to do that on his own. So at this point, Rip is telling him to just shoot him and get it over with, and he holds at his arms. Jax is unable to shoot. He just can't bring himself to it, and Rip tells him that he's weak. Rip walks away. Jax prepares to shoot him anyway, and Sarah then arrives, tells him to stop, but Jax insists that the Rip they knew is gone. She reminds Jax that it's Christmas when they remember to be their better selves, and so that she's protecting Jax, not Rip. Again, kind of a strange time to have a Christmas episode, but it worked for the most part, and the British shoot in the distance as Rip walks off. The Legend takes George back to William's house, and for the time being, they do lose Rip, but Mick and George then share a toast. Nate and Amaya tell George that his troops are waiting outside. They've gathered the automatic rifles, and Mick tells George that it's been a pleasure. They hug. Mick gives George the letter he wrote. George explains it's a battle strategy, not a love letter to Martha, and tells Mick that he represents the best of what their new nation can be. And I think it definitely does give Mick this new resounding confidence that maybe he can be a hero, maybe he can be a good thing. And I did like the way they did that. I just don't think that plot was as explored as well as it could have been. I think they could have definitely done better stuff with that. But as Wave Rider leaves, Gideon tells Sarah that history is back on track. The only change is a statue in DC that looks just like Mick. And Jax comes in and says it's good to have Sarah back. He figures that he's done being in charge, but Sarah tells him he did a good job, and Jax wonders how she makes the right choice when there isn't one, and Sarah says that she remembers the mission and what she's fighting for and try to hold on to her humanity, and the two of them share a toast, and We then see in the mess room the Legends celebrate Christmas 2 months too early, of course. 2 months too late, I mean, obviously, because it is now February, but it was still kind of cool to see him celebrate Christmas. Stein has Sarah cut the turkey. Ray gives Mick a rat as a Christmas present. Nate gives Amaya a present. She says that their night together was fun, but still doesn't think that teammates should fraternize. She feels they should just be teammates, and Nate agrees, walks off. But Amaya opens the box, finds a pair of ruby slippers, and it's really sweet, honestly. In fact, he gave her these ruby slippers, obviously from them talking about Wizard of Oz and things like that. You can tell he really does want something, but she's just not there yet. She doesn't know if this is really going to last. Remember, this is only going to be a temporal stay for Amaya. She's only there to get justice for Rex's death, and she still, she means it when she says she's only there temporarily. And Sarah then calls for a toast, points out that they lost America. She promises to save Rip and get the rest of the spear back because the Legion isn't a family like they are, and nobody fights like family, and that is the way this episode comes to an end. Let's just get in this episode and where I think we're going to go from here. So, because of the fact that this episode did in fact take place in the 1700s, there isn't nearly as much talk about as the other two episodes, but there still was a good amount of stuff to definitely get into. First of all, I think my favorite aspect of this episode, as much as I did love Nate and Amaya, because their stuff was great. I really did love where they went with them. Jax being a leader was really interesting to see. I like the change of pace with Jax being the one to lead the Legends and not Sarah, because she was able to do it. She sit out and then she got attacked, and I liked the way that was done. I thought seeing Jax, get that confidence, realizing that he is able to do this again. I like seeing the Legends win. Very rarely did we see that last season, and that's making us care for them so much more. They're actually winning. They're actually doing things right. They're solving things. They're working as a team, and you're getting the team dynamic a lot more than you did last year, and I love the way they're doing that this season. That's why this episode works. If this was an episode last season, this would have been one of the worst because you didn't see the team dynamic at all, but here you really did, and I thought they did a really good job with showing these characters have evolved, and I really did love seeing that. So I thought that definitely was very strong. Nate and Amaya, I really do hope that Amaya does come around eventually, but I like that she's holding up her end of the deal where she's only there for a temporal stay. She's there for Rex's killer, then she's going to leave, and obviously she feels that if it's temporary, there's no reason to pursue a relationship with Nate, but you can tell that Nate genuinely does love her, and he wants to make that effort, and I like the direction that's going. I think overall that definitely is very interesting. So I'm interested in seeing where they're going to go with that. I actually like it more that she is Nate's interest more than she is Ray's. I never really saw her and Ray as a couple, but I see her and Nate a lot more. She's a lot more believable to me, so I like the direction they're going with that. And then as far as what happened with Rip, I like seeing this more evil, dastardly side of Rip. He is controlled by Thawne, but he still is, badass. And they're doing a very good job with making him as unlikable as possible because that Rip, we're not supposed to like this Rip. And that's something that they got done very well here. In Season 1, we were supposed to like him, we didn't really like him, and now they're actually giving us reasons to not like him. So I like the direction they're going with that. I hope they actually keep him as a villain because Arthur Darville is pretty badass, I gotta say, as a villain. He did a pretty good job here. I definitely did enjoy that. I thought that definitely was one of the highlights of this episode. But the only other thing I want to talk about is Mick. I did like seeing George give Mick that new faith that maybe he can be good again. I thought that was very well done. Also, I loved Mick's intro in the beginning of the episode. I thought that was definitely really good. But as an episode, it definitely wasn't on par with the last two, but I still definitely did enjoy this episode. There was some great characterization. There was some great place where we went with the storyline, and just the fact that they won the mission in general and they were able to get this done and prevent George Washington's death. I liked that it went, it worked out for them. This actually, went successfully, and that's something that we rarely saw last season, and that's enough of a reason for me to enjoy this episode. And while I do think that some stuff here was a little bit cheesy, i.e. the Nate and Amaya stuff, as much as I liked it, I did think some of it was a bit cheesy, but I also really did enjoy, Mick and George. I didn't really feel like George Washington felt like George Washington, but, it still worked overall. I am still going to give Legends Tomorrow at the end of the day. I am still going to give it Legends Tomorrow Season 2, Episode 11, Turncoat, a 4 out of 5 or a B+. But over, guys, Merry Legends Tomorrow. Let me know what you guys saw this episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Where do you think we're going to go with Rip? Did you like what we saw with Nate and Amaya? Are you rooting for them? Yes, it's possible for me to like a DC superhero couple. I don't want you guys to think I shit on all of them. It's just some of them I think are very unnecessary. This one I actually do like. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next, which will be for Outsiders. I know I have 2 episodes to review. I'm going to probably review last week's, and I'll review next week's another time. I just don't have the time for it. But I will review last week's, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.